Imagine having a single device that can cook your meals, make your coffee, and even pop your popcorn, all while being eco-friendly and portable. Meet the Joule Kettle Pot, a portable electric kettle pot that claims to check all of these boxes. Is this thing all it's cracked up to be, or is it just a gimmick? If you are new to the channel, I want to say a quick welcome. My name is Riley Clark, and this channel focuses primarily on my time in the outdoors as a professional wildlife and nature photographer. This includes showcasing and reviewing products like this that I believe can help elevate your adventures as well. Now, in this video, we're going to put the Joule to the test to see if it can actually do all of the things that it claims that it can. But before we even dive into that, we need to ask one simple question. Who is this for? Since the Joule requires a power source, it's easy to cross off backpackers and those of you who like to use a bare bones camping setup when you're out in the wild. Now, if you are somebody who overlands or travels in an RV or van, or maybe even somebody who finds themselves in a motel or hotel room often, or you're a tent camper that has a power station, then this is going to be designed for you. Now, overall, the Joule is very lightweight and feels nice in the hands. This neoprene sleeve around the unit fits snugly against the side of the cooking area and has a great feel. All of the graphics along this have a lot of detail to them. They're very sharp and look fantastic. And lastly, this handle actually seems very sturdy. It's sewed in there really well. It makes holding the Joule pretty easy if you're going to be pouring out things and you don't want to accidentally drop this. So the controls here at the bottom are really simple. There's just a one on off button, and then you have the different modes you can pop through to set for whatever you're using this for. Now, the bottom here does have like this plastic style material. It does have a nice feel to it. And then also this back part where the plug goes in has this really sturdy feeling rubber seal, which is great for cleaning and making sure you don't get water or any type of residue inside of the unit. Now, one thing that kind of came to mind when I was looking at the bottom here is that this dial is actually a little loose. It has kind of a loose feel to it. It does tighten up as you work through the different modes, which if you look on the inside there, you can see there's like this ribbed metal structure of some sort. So they must be using some type of friction system. I don't know. I'm not even going to try to sound like an engineer, but as that tightens up, I'm assuming that's what's telling the brain, hey, this is the amount of power that we need. But it does kind of give a wobbly kind of feel. That's the only knock so far that I can see on the overall build quality. Now, this lid is also some sort of plastic material, but they say that it is heat resistant, so we will see how that does in our testings. It has a few different strainer options. You have just an open mouth here that you can pour out soups or coffees, and then you also have a strainer, so that would be for pouring out different liquids and if you want to keep the solids all in here. So now it does fit pretty snug on top of the metal structure there, and this orange tab does make it easy to pull that off. Also, you can just use your fingers, but I imagine if you're out in the cold, this tab would be a lifesaver, just being able to pop that off pretty quick. Now, the unit that I have came with a metal stir straw, which I believe all of them do, but mine also came with a French press system that we're going to be testing. There's nothing really crazy out there about them, just a nice metal stir stick. Now, to power the Joule, you use the cord that is supplied with it, which looks just like a regular computer style cord. It does come with this Velcro strap, which makes it nice to bundle up the cable, strap it down, and that way you can fit it inside of the unit for storage. Now, we can sit here and talk about specs, feels, and looks all day long, but that doesn't really do anything for us. So let's actually jump in and get to testing and see how this thing performs. When making the freeze-dried meals, the process was pretty simple. I just measured up the necessary water according to the packaging, switched the unit to the eat mode, and waited for the water to warm up. In the eat mode, the unit will bring the water to a boil and then will sustain the heat at a simmer mode until you turn the unit off. Once it came to a boil, which was around 4 minutes and 20 seconds, I turned the unit off and poured it into the bag. After a few minutes, I went ahead and stirred the meal until it looked ready to eat. I also tried pouring the contents of the bag directly into the kettle and found pretty much identical results. When making the can of chicken noodle soup, I poured the contents of the can and then some water into the Joule and then used the eat function to cook it through. It took roughly over a minute longer to cook the soup, but all in all, it worked out pretty well. To make some coffee, I poured water into the kettle to the fill point. I switched it to the drink mode, assembled the French press system, and then let it heat up. In the drink mode, the Joule will bring the water to a boil and then shut off automatically. So once I heard the water come to a stop, I poured my coffee in, let it sit for a few minutes, pressed it down, poured it out, and enjoyed my afternoon caffeine boost. Now I'm going to cut myself off and talk about one quick thing. When I was doing the drink mode, I tried to use this actually as a coffee percolator, where you put all the coffee inside and then raise it to temperature and then use the French press. And when I did that, I ran into an issue. So I'm going to talk to you guys about that issue later on. I just wanted to say I did use the coffee making function in a few different ways and some interesting results. The last mode is the pop mode. When using the pop mode, the lid actually has this small area for you to use to measure out the oil you'll need. They also recommend that you use the lid to measure out the kernels, which worked out pretty well, but it does go through the openings in the lid, so just keep an eye out for that. I then flipped the unit to the pop mode and waited. It took about 4 minutes until I heard the first pop, which is when I began stirring according to the instructions. A few minutes later, I had freshly made popcorn. So I quickly want to go through some pros and cons. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the pros because honestly, the pros should be there. That's what they're marketing for. It is super lightweight. I like how it packs up into a small footprint. It's very simple to use. It doesn't pull a ton of power at all to use. The main thing though that I found that I really enjoyed is that it is really easy to clean. The fact that you can safely secure the power system away by putting this rubber piece over makes it really easy and seamless to just run water through this and clean out the interior of it. So I will do one little preface before I start talking about some cons by saying I have never really used a camp kettle like this. So some of these cons I might have might just be user error in the sense of never working with one of these before. Now earlier I mentioned that I tried to use this as like a percolator for making coffee, where I put the water in and I also filled it up with some coffee and then put it on the drink mode and let it run. And when I did that, it actually popped the lid off and boiled over and sent coffee everywhere. So that is maybe a user error there, but I did notice when I was doing the soup, it was right up to the line, the fill line, below it, but right up to it. And that also boiled over. Now I never had that happen when I was just boiling water. It only happened when I had something else in there. So again, that could be more user error, but they do talk about putting soups and stuff directly inside of the container with water. So the other bit of this is this lid, when it gets hot, it has a nice snug fit right now, but it actually does start to loosen up. And so when I was using these strainers a few times, it wanted to pop open and dump a bunch of stuff out. So that could also have been that I was testing this repeatedly over and over and over again because I was obviously going through all the different modes, that it just needed a break, but it didn't ever look like it was going to melt. It just loosened it up a little bit. It also could have been that the metal was expanding and contracting. I don't know, I'm not a scientist. The product is pretty solid if you're in the market that it's for. So if you're somebody who uses a kettle like this already and you don't want to carry propane or butane sources with you, then yeah, this might be something that you could be interested in if you have a power source. So the con of this is you do have to have some type of electric power source, which these days the 500 watt electric power source that this requires you can get for pretty cheap. I will link a couple options down below for you guys to check out. If you guys have any more questions or if you have any other insights to using kettle systems, then please let me know in the comments below. Now if you're looking at a kettle pot system like this, let's take a second to look at some of the alternative options and competitors available for you. The first one that comes to mind is the Jetboil Flash system. This is arguably one of the most popular kettle systems for backpackers with its simple to use design, and since it runs off of a self-contained fuel source, it can be used in any situation. The Joule requires an electrical power source, so it cannot be used in certain situations such as backpacking like we mentioned before. Now, depending on how you plan to use a system like this will determine whether or not this is a negative or a positive for you. Now, some people don't want to carry an extra fuel source that the Jetboil requires, while others may not want to purchase a power station just to use a kettle. The Jetboil comes in multiple colorways, whereas the Joule only has 2 colorway options. Now, where the Joule takes a point in my opinion is on the price. The Jetboil is $129 and an additional $29.95 for the isobutane fuel canisters. The additional $29.95 will be a reoccurring expense, which is affected by the total use of the product. So if you use it a lot, you're going to be having this expense a lot more often. The Joule is only $99.99 and requires no added expense once you have an established electrical connection. That is up for you to decide whether or not this is a bonus or a negative for you. Another option out there is provided by a company called Fire Maple that also has a similar system for only $49.95. This system uses propane instead of butane, which there are many pros and cons you can look at between those 2 fuel sources. If you do already have an LP gas powered cooktop in your setup, you can purchase an adapter for $14.95 so you can safely use the Fire Maple kettle with your propane canisters that you might already be carrying. The Fire Maple also has a French press system that is an additional $14.95, which means if you add all of the accessories up, you're looking at a total cost of $79.85, which is still cheaper than the Jetboil and the Joule. If you would like for me to dive into a deeper review comparing all 3 of these systems, then please let me know down in the comment section below. Now, if you decide to check out the Joule for your own adventures, then use the code CLARK10 at checkout to receive 10% off of your purchase. Joule also offers free shipping, a 1-year warranty, and also a 30-day replacement guarantee if anything happens to your unit. For me personally, I'm not quite sure how this product is going to fit into my workflow just yet. I do see myself using the French press system for making coffee, but I personally enjoy cooking food when I'm out in the outdoors. It's one of the main reasons I like to go outdoors, is to cook food over fire and out in beautiful scenery, which is why I made this video right here that talks about my favorite cooktops to use when in my van. Now, the company that makes the Joule is also making a electric cooktop that I am really interested in checking out. So if you're interested in maybe seeing my thoughts on that product when it becomes available, hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss out. Now, that's all for now. It's time for all of us to get out there and do some adventuring.